was tagged by the Bookish Bunny to talk about my 10 favourite films ever. So that's what I'm going to do for you now. I've got a list here. Look at me, all prepared. And yeah, I'm going to tell you about my 10 favourite films, starting with my favourite feel-good film, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This film is absolutely fantastic. If I'm ever feeling down, I watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off because it cheers me right up. There's nothing about Ferris Bueller I don't like. I can watch this film over and over and over again in succession and I will not get bored of it. It is brilliant. If you don't know the plot of Ferris Bueller, it's about this kid called Ferris Bueller who takes a day off. So he rounds up his friend Cameron and his girlfriend and then go on an adventure around Chicago, and man, it's just well written, well filmed, it's just so good. By the way, these aren't in any particular order, so next up I'm going to talk to you about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. You might say I'm sort of cheating a bit here, that's a musical. Well, I'd say it gained its popularity as a film, and man, is it a good film. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is based on the Rocky Horror Show, the musical by Richard O'Brien, and it is blooming fantastic. The music in Rocky Horror is some of the best music in any musical I know of, and I never get tired of it. Every single scene is just brilliant. Yes, maybe some of the lyrics in the songs are a bit rubbish, but that's not the point. The point is, this thing does what it wants to do, and it does it well. It parodies all these different genres, and it just makes a brilliant, funny, and really kind of weird film. I highly recommend you check that out if you're into musicals, or even rock and roll music, or 1950s to 1970s horror films. Next up, Dead Poets Society. This film is about a group of boys who go to a boarding school and they get a new English teacher who encourages them to start a Dead Poets Society in which they gather to read and write poetry together. But it's about so much more. It is one of the most beautiful films I have ever watched. It is so well written, well shot, fantastic acting throughout. It's nice seeing Robin Williams in a serious role, and it never ceases to make me sob. It is one of the best films I've ever watched, and if you haven't seen that film, you really should, especially if you're into literature. Next up is a little change of pace here from Dead Poets Society. It's the Alien quadrilogy. That's right, those ones, yeah, with Sigourney Weaver and the big alien. I really love the Alien films, especially the first Alien film. It is your basic base under siege situation. It's a ship, there's an alien on the ship, you don't know where the alien is. It is an exploration of tension. All I can say about these films is that they're brilliant. Alien, it's so tense and it's dark and you don't know what's gonna happen, and it's kind of jumpy, and it's just really cool, and I highly recommend you watch all of them. I know the last one I think is directed by Joss Whedon, so that's a fantastic thing, always a good thing. But yeah, I absolutely love the Alien films. It's one of my favourite science fiction series. Next up, I'm going to talk to you about my other favourite series of science fiction films, though these are sort of also comedy films. Back to the Future. If you haven't seen Back to the Future, what is wrong with you? Go, run to your nearest vendor of DVDs or Blu-rays, or, you know, if you've got a computer you can just download it. This is the amazing thing about the future, isn't it? Back to the Future is a film about a kid, a high school kid, who's friends with this crazy scientist called Doc Brown. Doc Brown makes a time machine and hilarity ensues. It's a series of 3 films. It's Back to the Future Part 1, 2 and 3. This is not one of these series where they make the first film and go, oh, we can make a sequel out of that. It felt like, yes, this is where the story was going. It certainly feels like it was meant to be a trilogy, and it works really well as a trilogy, and I'd be perfectly happy watching them all as one continuous film. Ooh. Fantastic films, really funny and really well done. I just love them. Next up is a little indie film that you might not have heard of, still on the science fiction path though. It's called Attack the Block. It was made with funding from Channel 4, I believe. It's a small film, low budget, set in London, where these group of young teen boys see a meteor come down and they go investigate, and turns out there's aliens. So yeah, this film is very tense, very funny, and the monsters are one of the coolest monster designs I think I have ever seen in any film ever, and I just absolutely love it. If you're into small independent movies and if you're into science fiction, I highly recommend you check it out. Though, if you are not a native of the Great Britain, maybe you should look up some Great British slang, especially London slang, before checking out this film, as you might have difficulty because they're all speaking a rather chav slang, so be careful of that. Next up, three films that are not technically related but sort of are: the Cornetto Trilogy, made by Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. There are three films that are not really related to each other really, but they all have basically the same cast, same director, same writers, and they all basically some normal people, weird situations, and they're all fantastic. A lot of people say they like Shaun of the Dead the most out of the trilogy. However, I kind of enjoy Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz and At World's End equally. I think they're all equally fantastic, and I highly recommend you watch them all. You don't even have to watch them in order because they're not technically related to each other. It's brilliant. It is the perfect kind of trilogy if you're lazy and don't want to watch things in order, or you know, if you order it and that one comes first. Oh, so annoying. Next up, Serenity. Now, if you don't know what Serenity is, it is basically what Series 2 of Firefly was going to be. What is Firefly? Firefly is a space cowboy series that was aired on Fox in 2000 and something, I want to say 3, and it was really, really good. It was made by Joss Whedon, and it is one of my favourite television shows I have ever watched, and it was cancelled after one season, and everybody hates Fox for that, and I don't blame them because it was so good. Damn it, Fox. But somehow I believe Universal managed to get the rights to it and made the film Serenity. Serenity is where Joss wanted to go with Series 2 but never got the chance. Yes, it's compacted, but at least we got something. It is definitely Firefly the film. There's nothing about this film that feels different to the TV series. Maybe a little bit of a grander scale, but it still feels true to the series, and it's still equally well written and funny. I love every character in Firefly, and they're all in this film, and it's really very good. Next up, another thing directed by Edgar Wright, as I mentioned earlier, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is an adaptation of a series of graphic novels by Brian Lee O'Malley, and it is one of the best films I have ever watched. Stylistically beautiful, really well written, and it contains great music that was written by Beck for it and performed by Sex Bomb, the in-film band. Basically what it is, it follows Michael Cera's character, Scott Pilgrim, as he falls in love with this girl called Ramona Flowers. Ramona Flowers is lovely and she changes her hair every 1.5 weeks or so, and she's brilliant, but in order to become her boyfriend, he has to battle her 7 evil exes. I know, it happens to all of us. It's really annoying when you have to do that, but you know. And it basically just follows it. This is a comic book adaptation, but with so many video game elements, and it's just really well done. There's some great visual jokes in there, the editing is smooth, and everything about this film I think is colourful and fantastic, and I highly recommend you checking it out if you just like films. It's so good. And of course, Michael Cera, as always, is really good as the awkward, geeky teenager. Last up on my list is Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean. This is the first film. I'm not referring to the series, though the series itself is fantastic because anything with Johnny Depp in that role is fantastic. Pirates of the Caribbean is what made pirates cool again. In 2003 this film was released and everybody loved it, and I don't blame them. This was Disney making a film out of a ride that they had in Disney World, and somehow it worked. Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow is one of the iconic characters of cinema at this point. The fantastic swashbuckling story and the supernatural elements and the brilliant soundtrack just makes this film as a whole one of the best films I've ever watched. Really fun to watch, and I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it, and then maybe check out the other ones. You don't have to. they're not quite as good. So that was my top 10 in no particular order, but I do have some runners-up that I wanted to put on this list, but it would make it more than 10. Those films include Moon, starring Sam Rockwell. Literally just starring Sam Rockwell, pretty much. It's a great, tense film about a guy who is on a mining outpost on the moon on his own, and he runs this thing, and it's coming to the end of his term. Seriously, I don't want to tell you anything more than that, because it is so good, you should just watch it. Then also, kind of almost similar, 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke's masterpiece. It is beautiful. Though it was filmed in the 60s, it is one of the most visually gorgeous films I have ever watched, and I totally believe that they were in space. I didn't for one second think, oh, that looks a bit dodgy. It is gorgeous, and it's really well scored and really well put together. It's very atmospheric, it's very creepy. It's not a fun shoot 'em up exciting sci-fi like Serenity. It's more subtle, and that's what I like about it. And lastly in my runners up is Silence of the Lambs, and also the other Hannibal Lecter films, because Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter is so good. You watch Silence of the Lambs and you come out thinking, wow, Anthony Hopkins was fantastic in that role. And in fact, he won an Oscar for Best Actor in that role, even though he only appeared on screen for about 14 minutes in Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, that's right. He's only on screen for about 14 minutes. And yet he makes such a big impact on that film. It's amazing, and really watch it. I feel like I was repeating myself. I was just saying, this is brilliant, watch it, this is brilliant, watch it. But that's what I want you to do, because they're all brilliant. Watch them. I'll see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, and goodbye.